Okay, thank you. Thanks, Gabriel. Okay, folks, I'd like to call a meeting to order, please, and I'd like to start with the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, the Silix and Sinix peoples, and is home to Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of in the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, there are no late items, and I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Charleswood. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favour? Carried. And just for the public to know, we only have, 4 people in council chambers tonight. 1 councillor and 2 sports staff, so we're doing the best we can to avoid as much contact as possible at City Hall here, and mask wearing is the order of the day when you're travelling through our premises. So thanks for council for continuing to engage on Zoom or links or whoever you're reaching into us tonight. So, all right, up next is a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of July the 13th. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Renwick, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. As long as we're getting a majority vote on this, Councillor Morrison, we don't need you to come on with the video, but I might have to call on you if need be. So, but
okay,
I know you're
thanks.
there, right? The first item on the agenda is bylaw. And
There's a request.
sorry?
I believe there's a request on the agenda before that.
Redone.
Oh, I beg your pardon. There is a request. Sorry. There's a request from the Rural Empowerment Drug User Network, and the Rural Empowerment Drug User Network is requesting the council send a letter to the federal government urging them to declare an overdose crisis and a national public health emergency, and also requesting the City of Nelson support the Rural Empowerment Drug User Network outreach program. Council is now asked to consider this request. And there is a staff recommendation if somebody wishes to put that forward or adjust it and put something different forward or nothing at all. So you have a number of options available. Approve, do not approve, or refer the matter back to staff. Councillor Charleswood.
I would like to move it with a friendly amendment.
Okay, do you mind pulling your microphone over close?
No, I do not.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
okay.
All right,
How's that?
go ahead.
I see.
You'd like to amend the motion is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what you're
I
asking.
make that
Yeah, yeah,
proposal now.
Yeah.
So I understand staff's position on not doing part 2. So I'm supportive of part 1 and wondering if what we do instead is to include naming REDUN in our letter to the federal government and requesting funding for such organizations and then publishing said letter to our community so that we are in a sense endorsing the way they're asking, but it's within the frame of the letter, and
Okay,
that would
so
be my suggestion.
I think we could knock that down a little bit because we could make the request to make it available to the community as a separate piece.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to name them in the letter, then that would be one piece, right? And then have it released to the community, is that what you're saying?
Yep.
But in a public meeting, it's public information anyway, isn't it? The letter would be public information anyway.
The letter would be available upon request. It's not a confidential letter. I don't know if that addresses Councillor Charwood's point or not. I'll let
No.
you speak to that.
No, I would prefer to see it released to the public, maybe put on Facebook, something like that, because it provides an endorsement, shows that we're supportive of the concern and supportive of federal funding being directed towards organizations such as REDUN.
Okay, so that's your reason for making the motion. So let's narrow the motion down. And
And we need a seconder too, right
yeah,
after
we
that.
need a seconder for that. So, okay, so could you repeat what you want again without giving us the reasons for it, just the meat of the motion?
Sure, let's go to the first
Council
one.
direct staff to send a letter to the federal government urging it to declare the opioid crisis public health emergency as requested by Empowerment Drug User Network. Is that okay so far?
So far, yeah,
And that letter be released to the public.
yes.
Okay. Councillor Page, are you seconding that?
Yeah, I'll second for discussion.
Okay. All right. Open, the floor is open for discussion. I think, Nicole, you've had your shot.
Thank you.
Councillor Page, do you want to speak as the seconder?
Yeah, I do. The thing that occurs to me on this specific request is medicine and medical delivery, medical health, public health delivery is a provincial jurisdiction. So I kind of wonder on the effectiveness of sending this off to the federal government. In the province, it's already declared a public health emergency, but do we feel this is going to have a result by sending it up to the federal government?
I'm not sure we can answer that. We just send them off and we hope that somebody pays attention to it, and that's about as much as we can do at this point in time. But you're right.
And just to add some context, Councillor Page, that is the request, right? So
Yeah.
that's why we're trying to put the request before council as requested by the organization.
Yeah, no, it's no comment on staff passing through the request as authentically as the proponent has put it forward. I'm just pointing out that medical delivery is happening on a provincial level and is a provincial jurisdiction.
I would suggest that we put the context of the request in that letter to the federal government. They're asking the federal government to bring this forward to provinces and have that discussion with provinces to try to move this across the country. That's what I get from their report, and maybe that they certainly convene meetings of ministers of health, etc. So I'm gathering from their background information that's really what they're looking for, some federal leadership to work with provinces to get this on provincial radars. So I think maybe if we add the context, maybe it might have a little bit more support, and certainly you can bring it up with the Minister of Health. I'm not sure if we've asked for a meeting at the UBCM that we've done this. We think it's a Canadian-wide issue, and having provinces work with the federal government to have a Canadian-wide response is what we're asking for.
That help any, Councillor Page?
Good for now.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Hearing none. All in favor?
Rick's. Oh, never mind.
Sorry, Keith. Go ahead.
Rick was waving his hand, and
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't see you. I beg your pardon.
No, it's no problem, and I'm happy to proceed to vote. I
Okay.
think.
Okay, all in
Pretty
favor? I'll
straightforward.
call again. Thank you. Passed. Okay, onward to the latecomer. Okay, next is a latecomer interest rate bylaw number 3529/2021. Staff has presented a bylaw to set an interest rate for latecomer agreement related to the installation of excess or extended services in accordance with the Local Government Act 508. Council is now requested to pass the first of 3 readings for the latecomer interest rate. And there's a full, comprehensive, in my opinion, staff report, and there is a recommendation, and you have once again, you have options to what you want to do here. So to continue on, we need somebody to either move. Councillor Logtenberg, you're moving. And second by Councillor Renwick, that the latecomer interest rate bylaw number 3529/2021 be read a first and second time by title only. All in favor?
Question?
Sorry, do you have a question? Did I hear somebody say question?
Yeah, sorry, I had a question.
Okay, go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor,
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Councillor Renwick, yeah.
Thank you. I guess this would probably be to staff.
Yeah.
This makes total sense to me. I guess I'm wondering where this situation, where we might find this situation playing out moving forward within the city. And the second part to that is if somebody has already created that situation and it's in place today, are they eligible for this?
Sorry,
Pamela, you answering that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Renwick, if they've already entered into a latecomer agreement on another site, is that the question?
No, I'll be specific, Pam, if I can. I know that when the chamber upgraded the railway station, and I believe when we put the power in there, we put more than needed because of future development for that part of the world. Now, if that part of the world, there's a development going to be down there and they need to tie into that, does the chamber benefit from this?
I would need to check back into the Local Government Act, but I believe that they probably would benefit from this because I don't think there's a time limit on this. We as local government are always required to enter into a latecomer agreement if infrastructure is put in by a private applicant and there is excess capacity.
Is that okay, Councillor Renwick? Does that satisfy you?
That satisfies the second question. The next question would be, can you give me an example of where this might take place in Nelson right now? Like what kind of development would this fall under? Do you understand what I'm asking, Pam?
Okay, so currently the situation is we have some development, a couple of lots on Pine Street that there is no storm infrastructure.
Okay, that's the one I was thinking of because that's a pretty good sized development. I know that they've done some pretty big infrastructure work there. So that would be, okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pamela. Councillor Page.
So just for clarity, would we then go survey the city for, because my reading of this is we need to enter into a latecomer agreement. And in the example that Councillor Renwick brought up of the chamber, that's one example, but how do we identify who we then go forward and get into latecomer agreements? Is it going to be left to them to know that and come to us, or will we be serving in some of the last development over the previous decades to see who else would qualify for this?
Yeah, it's a good question. It is typically the responsibility of the applicant to ask for the city to enter into a latecomer agreement. I don't know of, I wasn't aware of that situation with the chamber, and I don't know of any other situation in Nelson that we've entered into a latecomers agreement.
Sorry, supplement for clarity. Are we in one with the chamber already, or my understanding is it would not exist?
No.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. We have latecomer agreements with other developments, definitely on the hydro side. Basically, they do tend to come up with, their engineer will come up with a design. We require them to consider development beyond their parcel, and then when we say that needs to be sized to accommodate this additional development, then they would, generally it just happens that you say, the way you have to pay for that, and unfortunately, as the developer of getting that service to your property. However, we can enter into a latecomer agreement if that development happens in addition to your property, then you do get this, that share back to yourself as that, the person that had to put that in. So it's pretty common. Although, well, it's not pretty common. We don't have a ton of development like that. It's, when those costs are at a level that, impacts that development, they certainly are aware of that. So we're not talking one two-family lots. We're talking some fairly significant infrastructure.
Kevin, could you try and use the microphone a little bit more if possible, please? Yeah. Did everybody understand what Kevin had to say there? Okay, thank you.
Are we going to notify these people? Is that a list we can generate? And
We're not going back to go. I'm pretty confident the ones that were significant, that would have happened. I don't think anybody would know at this stage if you threw something out there to try to determine whether someone could have been eligible or not eligible. I think that's kind of the needle in the haystack kind of argument.
So we're talking here about an interest rate. It's what we're working on.
Well, we're talking about a bylaw that allows future development to pay into that original development, and those funds would flow back at an interest rate to the original proponent who paid for the infrastructure. Yeah. So for the chamber, it will be a chunk of change, but I'm just, Yeah,
I'm not familiar with the chamber either. Like for example, the Kootenay Landing project. Sometimes that was negotiated through the actual development agreement. They were going to have to move, our main, I think it's sanitary that goes through that property, and the part of that agreement would have, if the YRB lot had developed down the road, they would have benefited from that, so they would have paid a portion of that. So like I said, the larger developments that have happened over time that impacted, those would have been part of it. This isn't about smaller developments. This is larger developments.
And that that information would be made known to a developer should they come in for a larger project. They would speak to you about this, Pamela, right? And you would inform them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so since I've been here in 2014, this is the first time that we've undertaken one of these Latecomer agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do not know of any other ones.
Yeah. It's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. And we should have a policy like this in place, because otherwise we're just shooting from the hip when we come up with the agreement at the end of the day, right, Kevin, for an interest perspective. So, thanks, Councillor Page. Is that all your questions? Okay. Any further questions? All in favor? Number 1. Thank you. And number 2, there's a latecomer interest rate bylaw number 3529/2021 be read a third time by title only. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Logtenberg moved in second. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay, Municipal Officers Bylaw number 3530/2021. Section 146 of the Community Charter requires that the municipal officer position be established by bylaw. Changes to staff titles effective May the 25th, 2021 must be reflected in the Municipal Officers Bylaw. According to the Municipal Officers Bylaw number 3530/2021 is presented for the first of 3 readings. And there's an option as an alternative, and there is a recommendation from staff should council wish to make a motion to put it on the table. Councillor Woodward, Councillor Renwick. Questions or comments from the mover or seconder? Anybody else? Hearing none. And number 1, that the Municipal Officer Bylaw number 3530/2021 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And next, that the Municipal Officer Bylaw number 3530/2021 be read a third time by title only. We need a mover and a seconder again. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Charwood. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 616 Railway Street. An application is requested to stratify 616 Railway Street, an MU3 Rail Town Mixed-Use Residential Commercial zone property with existing residential and commercial use. The property owner has received a heritage alteration permit and applied for a building permit to renovate an existing building with 1 residential unit and 2 commercial units. The resulting development would include 4 residential units, 1 existing and renovated and 2 new. 1 commercial unit, combined existing commercial units to allow expansion of an existing veterinary clinic. The applicant would like to strata title the 4 residential units and 1 commercial unit separately. Council is being asked to approve the strata title or not. And in front of you, Council, there's a recommendation and you have a number of options. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Logtenberg. Questions or comments from the mover or seconder? None. Anybody else? Councillor Charwood.
Just more for my understanding, I guess, to staff. So, under the Act, we're required to consider the priority of rental accommodation over privately owned housing. My understanding is this would all be privately owned housing. I understand that there's no rental housing under threat here, but I just want clarity that there is nothing keeping the owners of this building to rent these new units.
Yeah, they could strata it and rent it. Right, Pamela?
Because there
Yes,
could
definitely.
be in place for that particular property limits on renting, is my understanding.
That
Okay.
is
Pamela.
not what I've heard. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Pamela, we didn't quite hear you there.
No, that is not what I've heard at all. I don't believe that there is anything in place that would prevent them from renting this out.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Pamela. Councillor Page.
Maybe flipping that around a little bit, what Councillor Charwood was saying, I do think it's part of our opportunity that we can put a condition that there is some rental tenure zoning on this as part of the stratification. We could make a condition on this strata that it say one of the units has to be a rental. Is that correct?
Good question.
Sorry, Pam.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before, and I'm not sure that there would be anything in place that would say that we couldn't do that to private property. I mean, I'm only used to doing that for city property, you know, that we would sell it or lease it based on these conditions. But could we do it, impose that condition on private property? A good question, and I'm not sure of the answer.
Pam, the intent of this act is to, prevent rental properties from being stratified and turned into private. Is really the intent of that, which isn't the case in this particular development. So I would just be cautious as council to take a tool for a different purpose and try to impose rental on a different type of development. I think you want to do that carefully through your own zoning and good policy work across the board. Picking one particular project that doesn't really fit the intent of the act that we're trying to abide by. This doesn't seem like a policy approach to rental housing.
I think we would probably have to have it in the zoning, similar to what I believe Vancouver has done, where they have rental-only areas that are zoned that way. I'm not sure that we could just put this in place off the cuff.
Janice is waving
Janice,
her
go
hand.
ahead. I see you.
Thank you. I just want to say that that I support this, and I think that we always have to keep in mind that idea of the continuum of housing within the city of Nelson. And I would not be able to support putting a restricted covenant on this strata that says that one unit, like, because I wouldn't want to be the guy that ended up out with a short straw that bought the unit that had to be rented necessarily. I think what we need to look here is that and recognize the fact that they are building additional housing unit and additional capacity for the city of Nelson, and that I wouldn't have a comfort level here with putting any kind of restrictive covenant on this strata as we go forward.
Thank you. Councillor Logtenberg. Is he frozen, or
He's frozen.
Is it my imagination?
No.
He's thinking. Oh, he's thinking.
He's back.
Okay. Rick, go ahead. No, I'm sorry, but
Sorry about that. I clearly have
I wasn't sure somebody had shot you there or what.
I have a connection problem. Clearly, this is, I guess, to Kevin, but Pam, you may weigh in on this. Speaking to the policy tool that we're trying to achieve, it seems to me that the increasing rental stock in Nelson, you don't want to do it on a case-by-case basis, Kevin. I think that's what you're trying to say, that there should be a policy in place that's trying to help us increase the density of rental units in Nelson. One of those key tools that I'm curious to hear where we stand now is with the vacant housing and anything related to properties purchased for investor purposes and then left vacant. As long as these units are occupied, I think that is the direction we want to go. Do we have, from a policy level, something in place, or can we put something in place that does ensure that units like this are occupied?
So one of the things we should keep in mind in this conversation is part of the development of Railtown was that live-work idea that was developed originally for that area, and that was to bring more people to live in the Railtown area. And part of making that happen was that commercial mix of residential and commercial. And I think in this particular case, they probably read that part in the OCP and realized that this was an opportunity not only to meet our needs, but also to meet the needs of the building owner themselves and offer up residential units for people to live in and potentially to work downstairs, because there's a commercial unit attached to this also. So I think when we develop these ideas for particular for development in parts of our community, it's one thing to maybe revisit them, but maybe we need to revisit the whole thing rather than take it on one project at a time. This project is meeting what we requested for Railtown.
Yeah, my understanding at this stage, I know some communities, especially in the East Kootenays, where you're so close to the Alberta vacation rental market, they've tried to convince provincial governments to do various things, and they have responded in terms of certain areas where there's higher than normal of those type of properties with that additional, forget what they call that, tax for those properties. So that's, I don't think we have any tools that require you to live in your property, or how long that is, or you can't own a property if you're not living in our community for a certain period of time. I think that's beyond. I think that's probably maybe even be a charter or right of right that you might run into. But certainly, what I'm hearing is what are our policy on encouraging rental properties? Is there any other policy tools that we could be looking at? And if that's what you're looking at, then I wouldn't hang this particular development up on that, but certainly you can give direction to staff to look at that, and I think we're by and large pretty, we're very liberal in terms of trying to create rental properties. We allow 3 residential units on a single family lot, etc. We probably have one of the most robust suite policies or laneway housing policies. So we have, I think we're pretty strong on in the residential neighborhoods. I think in the commercial zone, I think we're pretty liberal on that as well, and encourage those those rental development. But if you want to have a workshop, go through what we have now, what other tools there might be, that's probably what you want to do. And since it ultimately affects your OCP requires public consultation, so you really need to kind of go to your community and check in with them of, here's some things that additional tools that might happen, and here's some other things. I know on the housing committee and the strategies, I think we've ticked off a number of those strategies that have been identified in that, but certainly we can look at it again.
Thanks, Kevin. Councillor Logtenberg?
Just a supplemental, which is that the vacant home and the speculation tax does seem to be a BC, and I know it's regional. So the city of Vancouver has a vacancy tax and a speculation tax, and I think a number of other residential communities or resort-based communities do as well. I'm not sure, but it seems to me that would be a tool that we would want in the city of Nelson to address the problem. Because I agree with Councillor Morrison that you don't want to do a one-off here. And I agree with the CAO that as a policy, we need everything we can to avoid speculation and driving up the housing price in the housing market unnecessarily.
So right now we're dealing with this project, so that sounds like that's a separate conversation. And when I read through this, the report from the engineer, the existing use of the building is a veterinarian clinic with a residential unit on the second floor. The owner wishes to develop the building with 4 residential units, and I think that's the key for me, is that we're getting that live-work scenario happening in Railtown, which we've been working towards for a number of years, and that sort of sets us on that path. The conversation around that is being brought up here is something we could talk about separately, but I'm not sure we want to hang this project up on it tonight. So.
No, I agree. I just wanted to raise that policy,
potential
policy.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Page?
I just want to be clear. Neither do I want to hang up this single particular strata conversion, but I think we do want to consider that the request that's being put forward so that these can be parceled off and be individually owned is one of the very few opportunities that we have to have discussions about, is this going to be available for first-time home owners? Is this going to be affordable rental, or is some of it going to be affordable rentals? Or, as you were speaking, like, is it going to go to, a very nice family from Toronto who might rent it out and do something with it, but it might be a very high-end unit. It might not meet the need that we have. So the only thing I would like to tack on to this particular project is a bit of a commitment from us and from staff on when we would have such a workshop and what that workshop would look like. We have other buildings in town that might come along at some point and need this kind of discussion. And I think we were having these discussions around the library and how we might get an understanding of what the opportunities in fact were. So can we agree to have a workshop before the end of the year, before next spring, that talks about what rental tenure does, that talks about what we might do during a strata conversion, what talks about how we might target the development of the housing where the need actually happens to be, because the market is driving development that is not servicing the need that we're seeing on the streets of our town. Or at least there's a segment of those people that are simply not being supported through the development as we're just letting it happen now. And I know we're trying to bring that vision through in some of our initiatives by increasing just the absolute supply of the houses, but the houses that are being built are not always meeting the need. And that's why we keep seeing the problem get worse and worse. So is council agreeable to having this workshop, and can we some commitment?
we,
I know there's a lot on staff's plate, but we've talked about this a few times, and
Yeah, we've talked about a number of things around housing, and that's but could we deal with this first? I think I understand what you're saying, but let's deal with the recommendation that's on the floor and that's been moved and seconded. And I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
And I would just suggest the development services will come forward with their proposed priorities and budget here shortly. Just a reminder that Pam is retiring in September. We have a new director coming on board. And we have, I think, a new planner that's with us tonight, and we're going to have to fill the other planning position, Sebastian's position. So I think council just have to be really clear on what your priorities are in the development services department. As you're aware, we're probably have unprecedented amount of development going on as well, and we're going to be a bit shorthanded and have some new people in new positions. So you're going to have to be a little patient. Like I said, I know we've ticked off a number of things on the housing strategy. That's really our policy document of what we should be doing as to on our housing stock. So I would encourage everyone to read our housing strategy again and look at what we're doing, and if there's some big gaps there that you think we should tackle sooner than later, then let us know. But I think as a community, we're probably one of the most progressive communities in all of BC. Pam can tell you, and when she was in Calgary trying to get rental suites approved in residential neighborhoods was a bit challenging. So I get the housing prices here. I can tell you as someone building that our building costs are pretty are significant. Our land costs are now getting quite significant. So I think there's a number of strategies that how do you free up land to develop? We know there's underdeveloped lots or parcels in our land. Some of those held by BC Housing themselves, and that can be redeveloped. So we're working with them hard on the youth center to make that project happen. I think council and our nonprofits have done a great job of getting this, taking advantage of this new money that's been put into housing from both the feds and the province. So I think you should celebrate a lot of the good work you have, but I get it certainly doesn't make normal rentals any less expensive, and we're trying to free up as much stock as we can, but we have a limited footprint here, and that's a challenge.
Councillor Charwood.
so
Sorry, Keith, go ahead. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I didn't think I thought you were finished.
I was just going to say, with Pam moving on, and congratulations for years of service, and thank you.
Thank you.
We're doing recruitment for the housing committee coming up soon. You should consider putting an application in.
Pam wants a break, for God's sake.
I can hardly wait to be on the other side.
Come to do this job for free now.
Councillor Charwood, go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin, for your comments. And I just wanted to point out that in the report, under impact on sustainability objectives, it is written that one of the objectives is to provide a mix of housing choices. And I think part of what you're hearing tonight from us is that this project is not actually meeting that goal. And so maybe if it weren't in the report, we might not have been as triggered either around that.
Yeah, I suppose that can be economies of scale too. So
or location. I mean,
Location
or
or whatever,
size.
exactly.
I get it. We could interpret it in many ways, but I think as you've heard from this
one
council,
of the things that's actually Kevin touched on a number of initiatives the council has supported over the years around density and laneway houses and stratifying and more, opportunity to develop suites and so forth. But one of the reasons we've been able to do a lot of that is we've created certainty around what we're doing. We didn't have a kind of a hodgepodge of, this year is going to be this way and next year is going to be something else and so on. And that's why these projects have come forward with us. If I own property in Railtown, as these folks do, I would look at what's the vision for Railtown, and in my opinion, this meets it. It's a live-work scenario, and this would probably be darn near the second one down there, really, that I'm aware of. So, it's starting to get a little bit of traction, and the more traction it gets, the more that area becomes available to the public. The Cottonwood Park sort of comes into play, and potential housing in and around there as well. So
Yeah, fair enough. No, I
so
understand that.
I mean, it's doing what we asked of the people that live there and own property there. Now, if we wanted to in the future change that direction, then we should make sure that the community out there is very much aware of what we're doing and what our values are and what our requests are when they come forward with the development. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. I assume that includes you too, Janice, right?
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Next is the long service award policy. Amazing the stuff we got to deal with, isn't it? Staff is presenting an amendment to the long service recognition policy to Council in order to modernise the existing policy. Council is now requested to adopt the amendment to the policy for reasons explained below. And there is a recommendation that Council adopt the long service amendment policy number 25500005 as amended. If someone wishes to move that, then we have Councillor Woodward and Councillor Page. Now, either one of you wish to speak? You're okay with the changes?
Yep.
All right. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Quarter financial reports.
I think we have Chris on. I assume that's Chris Jury.
We have Chris
It
Jury,
is.
but
It's Chris
I think
Jury.
we lost Pam because I thought she was going to introduce
Matt. I guess that didn't happen.
You mentioned that she,
the new planner.
Looks like Matt's still.
Right there. Matt, are you there? I see a name and initial. Hang on, Chris. Matt,
Yeah, no problem.
Matt,
I
are
see
you
his name
there?
here.
Ah,
Oh, there you are.
Hey everyone.
Good.
Hey, my name's Matt Kuziak. I'm the new planner here at the city. I'm originally from Canmore, Alberta. Actually, just moved here on Saturday. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Been in Nelson for, a whopping 36 hours now. Yeah, it's
Well,
a
that's
really great
longer than the last
opportunity.
planner, so.
Yeah, this is.
You're on a roll here, my
essentially
friend.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it's essentially a dream job for me in a place I've always wanted to live. I've spent quite a bit of time out here as a kid, and yeah, I'm really excited to get to work with the community and get to know all of you, and get to work on some of these topics. So really excited to be here.
Well, welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Matt.
Okay, good to meet you. Thanks very much, and we look forward to working with you.
okay. Thanks, Matt.
Skis? Did you bring your skis?
Yes, yeah, you bet I did. First thing I
I
packed.
mean, that means you're staying over the winter, so that's good.
Yeah, so
All
you
right.
never come into my club.
Thanks, Matt. Take care. We look forward
Thanks
to
a
working
lot.
with you. Take care.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right. Okay, Chris, you're on. Did we have something we want to release to the public from the closed?
Okay, so we have here today the second quarter financial update. This is our first update for the year. We do this kind of at the halfway point. So it's kind of a good check-in to see how we're doing at that kind of midpoint of the year. So I thought I'd go through, we've got a schedule here, a statement of operations where we show, here's how we are for 2021 year to date versus our budget, and then for the same period in 2020 versus the budget. And so, if everything occurred smoothly throughout the year, you'd see, 50% of your budget remaining. Of course, that not really the way things work in all cases. So there's some variations there, but what I thought is, there's kind of a supplementary explanation of some of the variances and some interesting points. I thought I just picked out a few from each section, the revenue, expense, and capital, that I thought were worthy of a little bit of mention. So if that's okay, I'll just kind of take a look at the revenue section here and go through a few things. Taxes, of course, that's our main revenue source. We had versus last year, we had our 1.75% tax increase. But in there as well, we have, revenue from new construction, new buildings. So there's about $75,000 worth of new tax revenue that's in there as well. So that's why you're seeing an increase of, a little bit more than that tax rate increase. The sale of services, this is one area that was impacted probably most significantly by COVID-19. And so that includes things like your parking, your campground, your youth center, things that were, shut down or definitely reduced last year. So we're seeing that return to not quite where 2019 was, but definitely a lot stronger than what we saw in 2020. So that's promising. It'll be interesting, though, when we get that third quarter, if we see any impact from the weather that we've been having, perhaps, the smoke, if that had any impact on the tourists or the parking, or, I have heard from Jordan that they did have a few cancellations at the campground there in August. So, that'll kind of be part of the Q3 when we look at that. The investment income, you can see it's down quite a bit from the year before. And that's, totally to do with the interest rate environment that we're in right now. We've had that quarter percentage as the central bank's kind of target rate. We've had that for, since March of 2020. And that looks like it'll likely continue into next year. I think the last report from the Bank of Canada was that they are sort of looking at inflation to move towards 2% sometime in 2022. It's a little higher than that right now. So I think we'll kind of see rates stay the way they are, and investment income therefore kind of stay at that same level. The big zero we have here for unconditional grants, that's just a timing piece where we do get our small communities grant, and we do get the parking fine revenue sharing, and those came in earlier last year, sort of in that May-June period, and this year we didn't see those till August, so that's just timing. And on the conditional grant side, we're seeing a lot more there. We did have some front loading of some of these capital grants for the pier. We had some for Cottonwood and our signage program. So that kind of came in earlier, and as the expenses will come in later in the fall. Kind of moving down to the expense section here. I thought general government was kind of worth outlining. It's on par with last year, but we do have a budget increase here. That's where we placed some of the COVID restart funds. If it's something that we needed, that's kind of in the budget here. We did have some additional expenses in general government, things like the election. We've got some grant-funded staff position that's in there as well. But in general, it's the general is kind of in line with where we'd expected. The transportation services, that one's really interesting. It's really due to the kind of the snowfall activity that we had. We had a really low snow year in 2021. I think I wrote in our little outline here, 384,000 is what we had for snow removal expenses in the first half of 2021 versus 610,000 last year. And it's the lowest. I kind of looked back the last 5 years, and that's the lowest that I saw it in that period. Now we still have a November and a December to come as far as snow clearing, but usually it's that sort of first part of the year that's the longer period, the higher period. So it's, we still don't know what will happen at the end of the year, but it's still, we're way ahead of the game. The environmental health services, we do have the new blue bin program now, moving away from the blue bags. We have the dual compartment truck as well. So things do take a little bit longer for the staff. I thought it was interesting, the stats that came out of that we had a 41% increase in recycling material collected versus the period before. And I thought that was quite interesting. I'm not sure if that's, it's probably a combination of things, but is it, more recycling? Is it just generating more recycling material? I know, probably a lot of people shopping more online and that kind of thing as well. So it could be a combination of different factors. But I think, in talking to Colin, I think doing a review kind of that whole waste collection program and looking at, incorporating organics as well and kind of seeing, what we can do to add some efficiencies there. That's something we'll look at doing. Just kind of moving down to the recreational and cultural services. Again, that we had kind of a reduced budget in the year before because that's where we had things like parks and the campground. So that's kind of come back up to kind of a more normal level as far as what we're doing in the parks area. We also had those COVID recovery grants budgeted in there, the ones that went to the not-for-profits, and those didn't get paid out until August, I believe, so after this period here. The hydro operations are higher than budget, higher than last year, but I think, the main drivers of that is the storm activity that we've had. We had a big storm on January 13th. We kind of was in time for us to factor in some of those things to the budget. And then right after that, on April 18th, we had another severe storm. So that's definitely something that as we put together, we're just kind of in the starting process of that now, but the 2022 budget for hydro, we hope to get that out a little bit earlier this year in time to kind of get our rate application approved for the 1st of January in 2022. So we'll kind of be looking at some of those things, the storms, the increased frequency of the storms we've been having. I know Scott has spoken to that quite a bit about, how haven't seen that kind of activity in the past, and now in the last 2 or 3 years, we've just seen a lot more of the storm activity. Councillor Woodward, you had a question there?
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering with that storm activity and the trend lines that are obviously showing this is getting more frequent, and it's not, of course, not just here; it's around the world. Do you feel like we are putting enough into that budget line to have the sort of best case, worst case can fit within that budget line? Because it seems like there's incredible. I would just say to bet on instability is a good bet.
Yeah, and I totally agree that I think that's something that we'll need to take a look at. It's so difficult to budget for a storm, and that you might have a year where you don't have anything, and it looks like, why did you budget so much and you didn't actually spend anything? And then other years you could go way over. That's one of the helpful things about having a reserve, a capital reserve, or maybe a storm type reserve where you put a certain amount into it. And then when a storm occurs, you can kind of pull from that reserve. So that's one approach as well. But yeah, I agree. It's definitely something that in the past wasn't such an issue. And now just seems to be something that's quite obvious when you don't budget enough for. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. So just kind of taking a look at some of the capital pieces as well. There's a lot at the beginning here on some of the paving and vehicles. I thought it was quite interesting, and this sort of ties into the vehicles and the electrification of some of the vehicles. Is I know it's been on the radar for quite a while, the fuel tank replacement at Public Works, but the fact that they're sort of taking a holistic look at it and saying, okay, here's a vendor who can help us look at not just the fuel tanks, but what kind of infrastructure we would need if we had increased electric vehicles as well. And, the spacing down there at Public Works, and just rather than just looking at the fuel tanks alone, kind of looking at it as one piece, also looking at engaging with Plug-in BC to kind of assess the fleet and see what opportunities there are for electric vehicles. So I thought that was quite interesting, and it's not written in here, but I did get an update from Jan at Nelson Hydro that we have, we have 2 new EV charging stations going in, one at the 10th Street campus and one at Silver King. And I think the Silver King one is good to go, and the 10th Street's just coming online, so that's pretty exciting as well. Just a little bit on some of those grant-funded projects too that I mentioned, the funds that we received in advance. We have the Cottonwood washrooms, which are looking to get going here in September. The Welcome to Nelson signs, of course, as everybody knows, the kind of design competition is ongoing, and the goal would be that there'd be something for council to look at in the late fall and construction to take place in 2022. The pier project as well. I think the tender for that is anticipated to go out sometime, in the next few weeks here. And the work will be done in that in the early fall. Also some design work going on now, and the actual construction hopefully then in spring of 2022. Yes, Councillor Woodward.
Sorry, with talking about storm trends and intensity and frequency, I'm thinking about that pier, and I'm thinking about that pier stuck right out in the lake, and so it could be bearing quite a bit of brunt of big storms, and just to maybe factor that in to the design and the construction, and if it's up to what it needs to be to withstand, I think not what is kind of typical, but more extreme.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. I'll ask Matthew what it's probably more the canopies that.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, Kevin, is the canopies and what can they withstand, and over engineering them, I would say, would be a smart move.
And engineers like to over-engineer things, so we're probably good.
Great. Over-engineer.
So another one I wanted to just kind of point out, and I think everybody's aware, is the completion of that bike route project, phase 1, that goes, along 3rd Street there. And I did take a chance to kind of walk that. I don't have a bike, but I did walk the route from the beginning to the end there. And I also know from some of the staff here who use the route to commute to work that they're quite happy with it as well. So I found the sidewalk portion great for walking. So, and on the hydro side, the Balfour Pole relocation project is basically complete. And the e-billing software that will be rolling out, I think September 14th is the go live date. There was a bit of a delay in that when ensuring that the system is kind of secure, and that our data is protected as well from that. So that's kind of the schedule there. Yes, Councillor Page.
Sorry to interrupt, but on this particular one, you note in your report that there were some additional costs associated with some security considerations on the provider's platform. Is there anything more you can tell us about that? Because at first read, it seems to be a place where I would hope the vendor would absorb some of those costs if there was a security consideration on their platform versus us as the customer, or at least all customers hopefully would absorb that cost. But could you give me more details as to what that was and why we're bearing the cost?
Yeah, so the additional cost is mostly internal. So it's just us, and it's, taking us more time. So there's more IT, as the project is extended, there's more IT staff time that's, before they can get that off their plate, we're allocating more of their time to kind of these regular meetings. So it's not an external cost to a third party, it's more our time. But, it is an opportunity cost, and that they can't move on to other projects. So definitely I can, there is some time cost to that as well, but that's an interesting point. I will talk to Marg about that and IT as well, Steve and the folks working on it, just kind of see, what the costs are, and if they've had those discussions with Advanced, which is the company that provides the software. I'll definitely look into that.
Thank you.
So that's kind of it on the financial side. I did also put in some statistical type things for the property tax season that we had. I've kind of done that the last 4 or 5 years, I guess. And I think the interesting things are, the trend is the same. We have an increase in people paying online or being on our pre-authorized payment program. We have, a decrease in people coming in and paying here at City Hall. And I think that just mirrors how society is in general, is that more people are doing things online and less in person. The big change this year, of course, was that the province took over the homeowner grant program. And so 100% of homeowner grant applications had to be done online this year. And we did do a few on behalf of a few customers that came in. If somebody was, if we felt that somebody was going to have significant difficulties, I suppose, going online, doing it themselves, and we kind of helped them out and did it online for them in our premises. So we didn't leave anybody kind of hanging out there. They did also have the option to claim by phone. I know closer to the deadline, the province was saying that, and I heard from a few people that it's kind of tough to get through on the phone lines, but like I say, the online by phone, or we did help out a few people here at City Hall as well. And the final page there just sort of shows some of those, the property tax deferment stats. It's not a hugely or widely used program. I guess the biggest increase was the families with children. I thought that was interesting that had gone up from 3 to 9 people using that deferment program. It could be something to do with the interest rate being so low. I know that some people think of it, I don't know how many people actually use it that way, but I've heard it talked about as something that people have considered doing at least. But yeah, again, it's that's kind of the trend that we're seeing anyway. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that or the stats or the report.
Clearly, Chris, we're busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Charwood?
Thanks, Chris, for all that information. This might be a question more for when we workshop our budget later in the year, but wondering if you could give a little insight into our investment portfolio. That's quite a significant loss, and is it only to do with interest rates, or could we attribute some of it to what's in our portfolio?
Well, what we have in our portfolio is mainly fixed income bond type securities. We don't invest in any, we're not able to invest in any equities or anything like that. It's all sort of fixed income. So last year was a bit of an anomaly as interest rates fell. We saw the value of our and the capital gains on our bonds go up. That's kind of the inverse relationship that you get. Now we're just sort of in that holding pattern of just having, you know, low coupon payments coming in from our bond portfolio. There's not a lot we can do to diversify outside of that kind of world of fixed income. You know, there's different types of bond mixes we can do, but you know, we're kind of limited to, and maybe rightly so, in the risk that we can take. So I think if you're comparing to last year, that's more of the anomaly. If we were to look back at, say, 2019 or 18, it's less of a abrupt change.
Thanks.
So we are regulated where we can
Yes.
invest. Yeah. You okay?
I'm okay.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick out for the benefit of the public the unfortunate news that the public library building grant was not successful. I think this is the first place it shows up to the public, but it is in here in this report that we were not able to get those funds to proceed with that building.
Thank you. Any further questions from Chris? Thanks very much, Chris, for all your
Yeah.
help.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Now we know what you're doing way back in that corner office there.
My green visor on.
Yeah,
Yep.
the green visor on. Yeah. Thank you. And thanks for not investing in those cruise ship bonds or whatever they were. Shares. Thanks very much, Chris. Good report. Really appreciate it. Are you sticking around for the other ones?
There are some finance
Accounts
reports.
payable,
Okay, I'll stick around, sure.
second quarter purchases, and building permit stats. So they're all in here, Council. And even though the border's open for American tourists, I noticed the Rusty Moose is still not on there. So no travel south for us. Anybody want to pick anything out of that group, you're welcome to do so. And if you have a question for Chris, you're more than welcome to speak to him. Nothing? Hearing nothing?
For receipt.
Okay.
I think we have to move for receipt.
Move receipt, please. Somebody move receipt of the reports. Councillor Woodward and Councillor Renwick. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. And now we're on to minutes. If it loads, should load here shortly. Advisory Planning, Cultural Development Committee. Anything anybody wanted to speak to that sits in on those committees? Hearing none, move receipt, please. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Page, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. No late motions, late items. That's it. Motion to adjourn. We beat Councillor Logtenberg's record.
By 1 minute.
Barely.
Barely. Thanks, everybody. Great job. All in favour?
Thank you.
Carried. Thanks very much. Take care.
Everybody.
See
Thank you.
everybody soon.
Bye.
Wear your mask. Get your vaccine.
Stay safe out there.
Everybody.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Thanks.